Are we ready?
No, it really.
All right.
All right.
Here.
Why, there's a lot of controls on here.
Yep. Good to go.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the Village of Lake Bluff Sustainability and Community Enhancement Ad Hoc Committee for Monday, April 1st, 2019. Can I get a roll call, please?
Certainly. Member Twitchell?
Here.
Member Sorensen?
Here.
Member Bishop?
Here.
Member Patterson is absent. Member Johnson is absent. Co-Chair Purrier is absent. Co-Chair Renner.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. All right. First up is a consideration of the March 4th, 2019 SEC meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments, additions, subtractions? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
Just a comment on page 2, where it says, in the second paragraph, Member Twitchell expressed her interest in the cost page and stated, LBOLA stated it was free. It believes it should be specified. I just think that needs to be cleared up a little bit. I think we mean the cost should be specified, but I wasn't sure, but
Right, and I don't think it's free. I think,
No.
yeah.
I think you were saying that
That was the intent.
we should actually account for what it should have been.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. That was it.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to approve as noted?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next up on is any non-agenda items. If there's anyone in the audience who wanted to speak for 15 minutes on a topic not on the agenda, don't think we have anyone. The order of the meeting, I don't think we need to change the order of the meeting tonight either. So let's move into general business.
Certainly. So as you'll remember, back in August of 2018, this body first reviewed plans for Washington Park. So the Lake Bluff Garden Club has been diligently at that time brought forward a proposed redesign of the park. It's a small kind of pocket park, if you would, north of downtown. So at that time, this group reviewed the plan, suggested, and I believe the Garden Club did move forward with a first phase consisting of plantings. But wanted to see some additional details brought back on a few subjects that are described in your minutes that I'll go over a little bit later. But Deidre Toner, a new plan has been submitted. Deidre Toner is here, who's the landscape architect that's working with Kanukin and the Garden Club to pull this together. And I think
Hello,
it would be best
everyone.
Hi.
to present.
Okay, so here's our pointer. Let me see. Here we go. Okay, so basically, we wanted to bring in an AD compliant pathway, and we wanted to look at the area that we had specified for a table or seating. How do I go forward with this? Just right there?
Right.
Okay. And so we'll look at the,
You may actually have to go like this.
okay,
If you go to the right, then it'll go down.
okay. Sorry. So this is basically what we were talking about earlier in August, and then we're just at the bottom adding about the approval of the gravel pathway. Here's where we were at, you might remember, that we looked at, and the larger round flagstone patio has been installed. The table is under design review right now, and they're working on figuring out which table they want to use with the garden club. This is how we propose putting in the stabilized granite pathway. We need a 60-inch circular area to back in and out of that table area for the wheelchairs. So we wanted to bring it in off the sidewalk, have the wheelchairs be able to go close, or the ADA compliancy close to the garden bed so people could look in the garden bed and get that idea. Bring it up and around the existing flagstone pathway. And then up in this area here, I integrated the rocks and the boulders for that photo booth that we're doing up there, so people can actually sit down, and then it'll be the gravel. So it'll be a nice little integration of that design area there. And then coming right down through here, and then again over hugging that area there. And so what we're looking at is basically doing a steel edge, 3/16 steel edge with a 4 to 6 inch compacted gravel base, and then a stabilized decomposed granite pathway. Kafka granite up in locally sourced in Mosinee, Wisconsin is a great provider. And here's a couple of local ones. The one on the upper right is the Midwest Palliative Care Center in Glenview. And they use a very light marble chip, so that's why it's so white. This is what they call ruby red granite, which we probably don't want to use. We probably want to use something a little more close to the flagstone. This is a very naturalized imperial gray look. Here's one, I think what we're looking at comparing ours to is, this is Brooklyn Bridge Park in New York. It was done by Van Valkenburg and Associates. They use the salt and pepper granite, which there's a polymer that goes in there, an organic polymer that helps to stabilize that. So it's a great product. So that's the pathway. Any questions about that?
Pathway will be gray, is that what you were saying?
I think because the flagstones have they're a natural Valderstone, which is Wisconsin, buff.
This is where the seating area is?
Right, so we
Okay.
want to match the, we want to pick from their colors and match it. It may even be closer to this one up here. What we'll do is we'll get some color samples and match it out so it matches the existing flagstone that's there now. So it's a real kind of a nice seamless look. But here you can see the boulders integrating, the seating integrating into the pathway, which is what we're looking at doing for our photo booth also. Okay, so that's the pathway. Another thing that we talked about was coordinating plant material with the upcoming corridor, Lake Bluff, Green Bay Road corridor plant material with Cliff Miller and Tesca and Associates in their plant list. And I pulled this detail out because this is the area where we have the sign right in here. That's that Lake Bluff sign that hangs on the corner. And in here we have some, I have rugosa roses in here, and then a display of blue salvias with some white calamintha that blooms later in the summer, and some coneflowers up on the side. So that was sort of a very, it's a layered seasonal display. And I ran this by Cliff because I said, you know, how does this work with your corridor plantings? And he said, well, we really aren't quite there yet. But, so we talked about if there's any changes in the plant list that they have later on, if they decide we want all of our signage to have Carl Forster grass, or we want all of it to have this grass as a symbol, we can pop it in. You know, we can take something out and pop it in. But until then, this might be a nice experiment to see exactly how those tough shrub roses do,
But so not a huge emphasis on natives here, or yes? I mean, some are, but some aren't.
yeah, they're almost all are natives or native cultivars. There's probably only about 5 or 6 plants that aren't natives. I think I did I didn't include the plant list in here, but I think it was in one of the other packages that went to the village, so they have that. But I'd be happy.
We have it. It's in your packet as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a column in there for natives and native cultivars. But that's the idea.
And do you have any, has science come out about whether or not the nativars actually provide any benefit to pollinators or not?
The question, you know, in terms of a definitive answer for that, it's still out being researched. But they have several areas on the East Coast and down in Texas that are actively researching this, and the Botanical Gardens has just started a trial. But Mount Cuba Botanical Center, that's attached to the University of Delaware, I believe, I'm not sure, but Doug Ptolemy, who's a very big proponent of natives, he started about 7 years ago trials of native plants and nativars. And so far, they're just as attracted to everything with the exception of nativars that are orange. Okay. So coreopsis that might be yellow or burgundy, other than being, you know, the traditional yellow coreopsis, if they're cream or they're no problem. Everything's still being attracted to that as pollinators. However, some plants, I think one of them was quince, which is a native and not in our area, but the orange quince, they didn't like it. The birds wouldn't go to it, but they went to the new pink quince and they went to the red quince. So the word's still out. Interesting. But the main thing is we're providing habitat not only for hummingbirds that attract by color through nectar and bees, but also there's bugs. There's, you know, our beetles and our flies and our other pollinators that we don't even see that are doing the job. Mm-hmm. So we could go all native, but I think that the opportunities with nativars when they are adding in the color gives us a nice emphasis for community and a better seasonal approach when we're looking from spring to fall. To be able to go there and say, oh, look, that's blooming now. Or, well, that looks kind of cool, even though it's fall. It's got a great rusty red color to it. So, let's see. Oh, briefly, water fountains. We're looking at doing an AD compliant water fountain with a pet-friendly attachment. There's several out on the market. These are some commercial varieties. They, you know, fairly similar. They come in stainless steel. They come in different powder-coated colors. You know, they run anywhere from, I don't know, $4,000 to $7,000. And, you know, they even come as architectural as, you know, something that's like that and they all have the option of adding a pet-friendly or a what they call a jug filler, which is for people that might be out jogging and want to refill a water bottle, that kind of thing. So that's where we're at. Any questions on?
We had talked about the fact that you were going to be adding trash and recycling containers, and I didn't see it on the new plan, and I was wondering what they would look like and where you're going to place them.
I was informed that, and I think, Glenn, you might be able to answer this, about the furniture that's come from the village, or the village has ordered furniture or something?
I'm not familiar
with
that.
There was some recent order of furniture that, you know, or some sort of outdoor furniture of some type that the village was looking into, and we wanted to coordinate that with the recycling so that it has the same look. And when we find out exactly what that specifically is, we'll be able to do it. But we talked about putting the the garbage in the trash receptacle here and one over here. So it's sort of into the bed but not sticking out in the open.
So it'll be closer to the sidewalk than to the eating area?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We could put one in the eating area too. There's plenty of room up there by the rocks. We could put one up in there as well. We talked about, in our committee, we talked about with the garden club adding a doggy poo-poo station, you know, those ones with the baggies and everything like that, but we all kind of thought it might be like bees attracted to honey. It would add to, people would be walking their dogs saying, oh, we could, you know, we could just walk over there and put our poo-poo in their depository. And it's just, it might just add too much extra maintenance as well. So We're going to hope that people are on their best behavior with dog walking, and they'll use the trash receptacles that are provided.
And the other thing was, I think that in the original discussion, I know Nan brought it up and I brought it up, what is the definitive that you've worked on as far as the maintenance of the garden? Because even though you're doing natives, there's still a lot of work to a garden, and even to keep, you know, perennials up, it's a lot of work. So who's doing that? And you said you were going to bring the community in. Have you started to talk to the neighbors? Have you got a committee going?
Well, we have a commitment from Canukin is going to maintain the garden for a year.
Right.
And I provided a document to the garden club, which is a 4-year plan for maintaining the garden. And it's based off of what I developed for the Belvedere Garden at Forest Park in Lake Forest, where it shows exactly how many hours we need to have for weeding, how many hours are needed for village employees,
And
that kind of thing.
How many hours is that?
Oh, it's not a lot, and I'm not specifically working on it for them. You know, the garden club is looking at it, and they wanted to see from their membership how much they were going to be able to dig off on that before they started siphoning out, okay, we're going to need to have this, you know, this much or this much. The other thing that they're looking at doing is fundraising for an annuity fund of $10,000 to $20,000 that can be given over to the city and kept in a separate account that's just specifically for the maintenance of the garden.
That's great.
We have that, I did that at the Healing Garden in Lake Forest, and that has a huge, it's grown over the years, and so they, you know, we can tap into it for plant material if we need to, if they need more hours because they're having an event or it was a horrible winter. It's really a good thing. But we don't want to put too much stress on the village in terms of maintenance. That's the whole idea.
I know you mentioned getting some of the high schoolers involved that want to do volunteer work, and I didn't know if that had gone forward at all. That was such a good idea.
You know, I have not worked on that. I believe that the garden club and Marietta Hans was actually spearheading that because she had talked with she did talk with police, you know, for youth that have community service that's monitored by the police. So she has gotten some notes back on that, and wasn't able to come tonight because she's just recovering from a surgery. But there has been some work on it. So the maintenance of the garden is, you know, definitely a main thing, because it's always my biggest concern. Because it's like, you know, you have a child and you just can't throw them out in the woodland. You got to take care of them and give them everything they need to survive.
What about signage and education for the community?
Yes, we are going to, after everything is planted, we're going to look at, because there's repetition of plants in the garden, so we don't want to have too many signs. So what we want to do is go around and look at where the best individual signs are to be placed, and then we're going to order the same as the Chicago Botanical Garden, so it's a very, you know, standard thing. And then what we'd like to do is have a posting up in the front, a special posting that gets changed every 2 weeks, every month, that somebody from the garden club does that talks about, oh, it's you know, spring and the ephemerals are up. You know, look at the shooting star, or look at this, or, you know, it's fall and we're mulching the leaves and putting them back in the beds instead of, you know, blowing the leaves or changing, you know, raking out the leaves.
So
But we want to be able to
green tips as well as
exactly
what's in bloom.
right. Yeah, because we want to encourage people in the community to use this garden as a springboard for, oh, I could do that at my house. You know, I could get those plants at Pasquesi or Home Depot or whatever, and they'll see that way they're labeled and they can take that with them.
That's great. I think, you know, you came to us with a really good plan, and I think you've really made a great plan now with these. I think this is really fantastic what you've done.
It's been fun. I'm looking forward to, you know, the next phase. We're going to the planting will take place probably about May 15th to May 30th. depending on the weather. But what we'll do is we'll start with, sort of reorganizing the beds, and one bed's gonna get smaller, and then we set aside the plants that we have, and then we integrate. It's a design process with the exact design with the plants that we have. And so we'll be done, the pathways will be done in the early part of May. The crab apples will go in the early part of May, and then May 15th we'll start with the perennials, and that's about a 3-day process. And we'll let everybody know on that when we're gonna do it, because I know the garden club wants to come and watch, and we could put it in a newsletter or something like that, or on the website even. People can stop by and take a look.
Will there be any kind of official opening ceremony, do you think?
Yes, they're going to have they're going to have a dedication. But they're waiting to do that when the table's installed. So I think it's going to be late summer, early fall. Because they've just secured Mike Jarvie from Crabtree Farms. They just got a commitment from him to do the table.
That's nice.
And so they're looking at the design, either an octagonal table or a rectangle with the oak tree. And he's committed to it. He'll be able to get it done. And so we're kind of like saying, okay, well, we're going to plan the dedication ceremony, and then, so he knows he has a deadline for that. So, but there will be a dedication.
Yeah, we'll be sure to publish it, I'm sure, and promote it in the village newsletter and online.
Do you have a watering plan in place? If you're planting in mid to late May, then we suddenly go to 90 degrees, and I know some of the plants, if they're natives especially, tend to like the cooler temperatures anyway for setting roots.
Well, one of the things, there is irrigation in the garden now, and there's heads in the lawn, and then there's heads in the existing beds. So one of our construction issues is that once we redo the bed lines and we get things planted, the irrigation company is going to come in and we're going to flag all the heads and say, okay, this is a rotor head, which is for turf, but here we needed to spray into the bed. So we're going to redo those heads, and if we have to put new ones in, we will. But we want to make sure that, and then there's a vault that's going in, a water vault that's going to be going in. And we do have an RPZ already there for the irrigation system. And we're going to investigate this a little bit because there's some sort of a timer on this. And we're wondering if there's zones or if it's just one flat out watering system, because we'd like to be able to zone it. And if we can get a zoning clock in there and maybe get a donation from one of the companies to do that, that's what I'd like to see happen. And then that way we can zone the beds and the turf separately. So ideally for the first year and a half, all the plant material, the new plant material, all the beds need to be watered. And then after that, they're going to be fine on their own. The turf, on the other hand, as you know, July, August, it gets dry, everything turns brown if it's not watered, and then one rain and it turns green again. So that'll give us the opportunity to water the turf and keep the turf zones on and keep the grass green, even when we're not watering the rest of the garden. And maybe years that we don't even use the irrigation, depending on the water, or it's maybe only used July and August. So it'll really cut down on the amount of water that's used, because there's a meter in there, and we want to be compliant for who's paying for what, because as it has been now, I think the irrigation has just been on willy-nilly, and then it's just kind of been rolling and causing some wet areas in some of the things, and then this year they didn't turn it on at all, and we didn't have the wet spots in the lawn. So we're working on that, and we're sort of working on getting a donation for the upgrading the system to have a clock on it, a clock with zones, even just a couple of zones, that's all we really need.
To continue that thought, so the meter pit that Deidre mentioned, State law requires, and many towns don't have this all in place yet, but requires that whenever we're touching these water systems, we need to put them on metered water. Well, of course, there's no structure there to put a meter inside to be freeze-proof, so we're having to make a big concrete construction that gets you below the water line, so you can have the meter there where it won't freeze. Then it has to go up into a box where the RPZ is. That's a backflow preventer, keeps irrigation water from going back into the water system. Then it goes down again and into the irrigation system and probably into this drinking fountain as well. So probably good $6-7 grand to the village will probably put in at the end of the day, in addition to what the garden club's putting in.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Do we need any form of a motion or,
It wouldn't hurt, yeah, to recommend approval.
okay. Can we get a motion to approve the plan as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Certainly. Member Twitchell,
Aye.
Member Sorensen,
Aye.
Member Bishop,
Aye.
Co-Chair Renner,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on the agenda is a village staff report.
Certainly very short report tonight. Sustainability plan revisions, I think we've heard from everyone. I'm not quite ready to go tonight. Still a couple rough spots trying to smooth out on biodiversity and then some of the climate things, how to work those in the best way. So I think that would conclude my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Members,
Very quick.
reports from the members.
We're moving.
Any items to discuss?
Nope.
Okay.
Starting to get worried that I might have a reputation for verbosity or something.
Co-chair report, I did attend the village board meeting where we presented and talked about the corridor plan.
Nice.
Was very well received. I don't know if there's any, I mean, we're proceeding with the design at this point. And I know that Lake Bluff Open Lands was extremely anxious to start taking their parts of this and working on it. So I know that the village staff is coordinating with them and seeing what can be done. One of the things that came up at the village board level, which was not directed to the SEC, was the leaf blower ordinance or leaf blower discussions.
Right.
And so I know that the village board is going to discuss that in April. I did offer to the village president that if she needed us to look at anything, we'd be happy to look into it. But it sounds like at this point, what they're primarily considering is just the hours of use.
What is it
Okay.
now? Is it 7 AM? Do we know?
No,
Just
it's,
wondering.
off the top of my head, it's either 8 AM or 9 AM till 5:30. Starts an hour later on the weekends, and then either way, homeowners can go until dusk. So
Yeah.
those are just for private
Definitely some
companies.
violations in my neighborhood.
7 a.m.
They all start at 7:30.
Yeah, for sure, 7 or 7:30. Or
Yeah.
I think with us, even before 7, there's one that comes really early.
Is that a homeowner or
It's a service.
Service.
It's a service.
But
not to name your sources?
I think I mentioned to Kathy, the village president, that in the future, there may be opportunities that we should consider for more sustainable landscaping practices in general. In the residential market for both leaf blowers and lawnmowers and even snow blowers now, the battery technology has gotten good enough that the lawnmowers and even snow blowers that you can buy are equivalent in power to what the gas used to be. And the lawnmowers and the snow blowers use the same interchangeable batteries, so you don't have to, you can have them
cool.
charging in a
Seasonal
rack.
rotation.
Yes.
Nice.
And same with the leaf blowers, it's just, you have 1 or 2 battery packs and you just plug and play into the models. That is slowly getting into the commercial market. I did some research. Obviously, the commercial backpack ones are much larger, need more power, but they have just started to release some commercial-grade leaf blowers that are battery-operated. So I think there's some opportunities in the near future for us to look at how, beyond the hours, maybe we start switching to, they're quieter, they're carbon neutral, no emissions, And if you go
So
on
how-
YouTube, you can see how much quieter they are.
And the emissions are huge. I mean,
Right.
articles are popping up all over the
Mhm.
place. So
Right.
it's not just us having this conversation.
Right.
And it falls under our purview, but I'm glad the village is addressing it in their own way.
So how, since so many of those are independent companies, how do we reach them? And one of my sort of fantasies has been, how could somebody host an event where you train the various companies on how to do green lawn maintenance? Like, what does that look like? Because I know a number of them just don't know how. And so if homeowners ask for it, they don't even know what to do. So is there something we could host a workshop and then we demonstrate those different kinds of batteries and blowers, but also train them what is green lawn care?
I think for the,
College of Lake County also might be an interesting resource.
Totally, their sustainability.
I think for the residents, I think for personal ownership, I think there's definitely some demonstrations we could look at, and who knows, maybe we could, again, I keep thinking to the farmer's market, but there might be opportunities where maybe one of the hardware stores or maybe one of the suppliers could donate or bring some equipment by so people could see what it looks like and what it sounds like.
It'd be interesting to see how many people do their own lawn
Yeah.
care and how many use services.
Right.
If I just use my neighborhood as a demo, I think of one person on my street who does their own.
My thought, and this is just my own thought, is that I know that when I was on the village board, we looked at licensing landscapers. I think, and the village has always had, I always like the kind of the carrot and stick approach where you don't force someone, but there's a benefit to it.
Right,
I think if we
totally.
got to the point where we licensed landscapers, there could be, similar to carbon offsets, there could be, if you're just a landscaper and you follow the general rules, your yearly permit is X dollars. However, if you if you're a green landscaper, there is no permit fee.
Yeah, it's
Or
waived.
whatever, or it's waived. So that there might be an economic incentive. And secondarily, I don't know the extent of our own public works department's equipment. So if the village owns leaf blowers, it might be time for them to take a lead and look into whether they buy electric leaf blowers. And I know some of the big mowers are not necessarily, like the riding ones are not yet, there's no
They're not there
Tesla
yet.
model, but
As soon as there is, everyone's going back to
Yes.
doing their own yard.
But, yeah, there might be some opportunities for the village to take a lead there as well, but those are all can be discussed, I'm just bringing them up as a,
Do other communities license their lawn services?
some do.
Do
Some
they?
do have permits, and I know it was a discussion, not necessarily from a sustainability, but just from a regulating and trying to control who's coming into town and,
Who's dumping in the ravines?
who's dumping, yes, so.
Right.
Well, our provider definitely wants to know, and he was saying, where can I find this information, because I don't want to be non-compliant. If the hours change, how do I know? What can I do? And I wasn't sure exactly what to tell him and how quickly he would find out,
Right,
but he definitely services 5 of us in a row, so he's got practically the whole block, and he's anxious to do everything right, he just doesn't know how
How to
to
get
get the
access to
information.
information.
sure.
And I think most
It's a
people
good
are.
point.
True.
Okay, that's all I got. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, no opposed.
Thanks for
Awesome.
coming out
Wow,
tonight,
35
everybody.
minutes.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.